You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I am Parmeshwar Bava, an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. The Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House and one of Trump's most influential aides, Stephen Miller, says Trump wants tremendous relations with India, but also further accused India of effectively financing Russia's war in Ukraine by purchasing oil from Moscow after the US president escalated pressure on New Delhi to stop buying Russian oil, echoing what Marco Rubio had also said last week. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines is set to arrive in New Delhi. This is his first trip to India since assuming office in 2022, and this as India and Philippines have begun their first bilateral naval exercise in the South China Sea. The funeral of Habib Tahir, one of the terrorists behind the April 22nd strike, who was killed in Jammu and Kashmir, was held in his village in POK last week. Earlier, members of the Pakistan Army had attended the funeral of terrorists who were killed in Operation Sindoor that was launched by India. As immigration protests escalated in the UK over the weekend, the UK has now unveiled plans for a new law that will crack down on criminal gangs behind social media advertisements promoting dangerous small boat crossings and other forms of illegal immigration into the country. Members of the oil producers group OPEC agreed to raise production as concerns grow over possible disruptions to Russian supply. The group has been hiking production since April in a bid to cushion the market against geopolitical tensions. Despite curiosity around the new program, the launch date and specific details of which are yet to be released, data shows that the existing investment-based residency program EB-5 in the US, which the Gold Card will replace, has seen more applications from India over the past 1 year than ever before. A big focus, the Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House and one of Trump's most influential aides, Stephen Miller, has accused India of effectively financing Russia's war in Ukraine by purchasing oil from Moscow after the United States president escalated pressure on New Delhi to stop buying Russian oil. Mr. Miller actually tempered his criticism by noting Trump's relationship with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, describing it as tremendous. But Miller's criticism was some of the strongest yet by the Trump administration about one of the US's major partners in the Indo-Pacific. Stephen Miller says it's astonishing that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. Listen into his remarks.
That it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products. They impose massive tariffs on us. We also know they engage in a lot of cheating on immigration policies that is very harmful to American workers. And of course, we see again the purchasing of oil. So President Trump, look, he wants a tremendous relationship and has had always a tremendous relationship with India and the Prime Minister. But we need to get real about dealing with the financing of this war. So President Trump, all options are on the table to deal diplomatically, financially, and otherwise with the ongoing war in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Indian government sources have indicated that New Delhi would keep purchasing oil from Moscow despite US threats. Trump has also threatened 100% tariffs on US imports from countries that buy Russian oil unless Moscow reaches a major peace deal with Ukraine. Let's move on now. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines is set to arrive in New Delhi. This is his first trip to India since assuming office in 2022. And this as India and Philippines have begun their first bilateral naval exercise in the South China Sea. Marcos Jr. will meet Dr. Jaishankar today. And on the 5th of August, he will lay a wreath at Rajghat before holding bilateral talks with Prime Minister Modi in Hyderabad House, wherein India and the Philippines will sign several agreements. He will then meet Mr. Nadda, as what we're told, and then travel to Bengaluru to call on the Karnataka governor. But India and the Philippines began the two-day bilateral maritime cooperative activity on Saturday in waters close to the Scarborough Shoal, a focal point of the maritime dispute between China and the Philippines. This report tells you why this visit is so significant.
In a high-profile diplomatic engagement amid rising regional tensions with China, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines arrives in New Delhi today. His first visit to India since taking office in 2022. His state visit comes at a significant moment as India and Philippines mark 75 years of diplomatic ties, and even as the two nations conduct their first ever bilateral naval drill in the contested South China Sea. The four-day visit will begin with a meeting with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on the 4th of August. On 5th, President Marcos will pay tribute at Rajghat, followed by key bilateral talks with Prime Minister Modi at Hyderabad House, where multiple agreements are expected to be signed. He will also meet President Draupadi Murmu and BJP President J.P. Nadda, who also serves as India's Health Minister. President Marcos will then travel to Bengaluru, where he is scheduled to call on Karnataka Governor Thawarchand Gehlot. India's defense ties with the Philippines are deepening, most notably with the delivery of the Brahmos missile system in April 2024, making the Philippines the first foreign nation to acquire it. The ongoing joint maritime drill near the Scarborough Shoal underlines shared concerns over China's assertiveness in regional waters. This aligns with India's Act East policy, Vision Maha and its Indo-Pacific vision, and is expected to chart new ground in areas like trade, defense, healthcare, and maritime cooperation. This visit sets the stage for a deeper strategic alignment in diplomacy, defense, and the Indo-Pacific. Rhythm Acadia's report for NDTV World.
Meanwhile, members of the oil producers group OPEC Plus agreed to raise production as concerns grew over possible disruptions to Russian supply. The group has been hiking production since April in a bid to cushion the market against geopolitical tensions, and the decision to increase oil output by 547,000 barrels per day would fully reverse a 2023 2.2 million barrel cutback aimed at shoring up prices. The move comes after US President Donald Trump threatened to put tariffs on buyers of Russian oil, which could drive up crude prices and also severely impact India and China, which are Moscow's biggest customers. And as Stephen Miller expresses that it's astonishing that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil, Donald Trump confirmed over the weekend his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, will visit Russia next week ahead of a looming US sanctions deadline and escalating tensions with Moscow. Donald Trump also warned Russia of ordering the repositioning of 2 US nuclear submarines after highly provocative statements of the country's former president, Dmitry Medvedev, as the two engaged in a war of words online. Listen in to the US president's latest reaction.
A deal where people stop getting killed. They had a number that just came out that a tremendous number of Russian soldiers are being killed. And likewise, Ukraine, a lower number, but still thousands and thousands of people. And now we're adding towns where they're being hit by missiles. So it's a lot of people being killed in that ridiculous war. And, you know, we stopped a lot of countries from war, India and Pakistan. We stopped a lot of countries.
In other news, Indian origin lawyer Mathura Sridharan has been appointed Ohio's 12th Solicitor General. And Ms. Sridharan will serve as the state's top appellate lawyer representing Ohio in high-stakes cases before state and federal appeals courts, including the US Supreme Court. Now, following this announcement, Mathura Sridharan was actually trolled online, with some critics pointing to her bindi to question why a non-US individual was chosen for the post. Many, though, have praised her legal abilities, rightfully so, citing her successful argument before the US Supreme Court and the high recommendations she received from both of Ohio's previous Solicitor Generals, that's Benjamin Flowers and Elliot Geiser. Some have also described her as brilliant, outspoken, and well prepared to serve the state. With that, let's turn our attention now to Bangladesh. Activists of the National Citizen Party, well, they have actually been mustering up a lot of action at the moment. Saurabh has been tracking the latest for us. But the student wing of the BNP held separate rallies in Bangladesh on Sunday ahead of the first anniversary of the July uprising that toppled the Sheikh Hasina-led government on the 5th of August last year. The newly floated National Citizen Party, the NCB, unveiled the party's 24-point manifesto during its rally in Dhaka, and both groups said their rallies marked the first anniversary of the so-called July uprising, which led to the ouster of the government led by 77-year-old Sheikh Hasina. Bangladesh is to unveil the July Declaration on the 5th of August. Saurabh Gupta has the latest for us.
Bangladesh is basically building up to August 5th, and August 5th is the anniversary of the toppling of the Sheikh Hasina government after violent protests rocked Bangladesh last year. Now, these protests started over a quota announcement or a quota decision by a court, but it soon turned into something much bigger. And eventually, on the 5th of August, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, had to flee Dhaka. Now, since then, there have been efforts to make this a turning point, and those who were protesting against Sheikh Hasina and those who are in charge of running the country now, including the interim government led by Muhammad Yunus, and those who were protesting on the streets of Dhaka and other parts of Bangladesh, say that August 5th is something that's going to be important, and they're wanting to also, come up with the July Declaration. But at the same time, the trial against Sheikh Hasina, the International Crimes Tribunal, has already started. Day-to-day proceedings are taking place. In fact, what we've been given to understand is that from the details that we know is that there have been witnesses who have testified today on day one of, those hearings that are taking place. In fact, the first witness who testified today, and this is, of course, in that, court proceedings, said that Sheikh Hasina was responsible for killing thousands. The Awami League has denied all of these allegations. Sheikh Hasina has also denied these allegations.
Let's switch tracks now to Canada. US President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney will likely talk over the next number of days after the US imposed a 35% tariff on goods not covered by the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. The Federal Cabinet Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, actually said that he was encouraged by recent discussions and believed a deal to bring down tariffs remained an option. But is Mark Carney optimistic of a better deal? Well, here's what he's saying.
Look, Canada's strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. We're building this great country. I just met with the Premier, building BC, building Canada, building in a Canadian way, building sustainably, building together, building positively, and that's what we're going to do. And yes, we'll come to something with the Americans, something constructive with the Americans.
Maha Sadiki has been tracking all the latest developments and all that's happening behind the scenes. She joins us live from Vancouver at the moment. Maha, is there an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of the tariffs imposed?
At least that's what Mark Carney and Canada are hoping for. But experts are warning, Parmeshwar, the Canadian side, that a no deal might be better than a bad deal for Canada. So they are very cognizant of the fact that they need to strike a deal that is clearly in their favor, even at this time when Donald Trump is going hammer and tongs against most countries across the world they trade with, especially the top 20 countries they trade with. We have seen a spate of tariffs against most of them, but Canada has had some punishing tariffs since the day Donald Trump, in April, announced that he's going to impose tariffs against Canada. They already have a 50% tariff on aluminum and steel, which is across board for other countries as well, 25% tariffs on auto, and 10% tariff on energy imports from their country to the United States. A 35% tariff on non-CUSMA compliant goods is punishing for them in such a scenario. Now, many of the experts believe that most goods are CUSMA compliant. Some peg it at about 89%. Some say only 60% goods are USMA compliant, and therefore, if it's only 60%, then for some of the sectors, it could be very, very detrimental to have a 35% tariff that Donald Trump has announced. If it's 89%, the impact may not be as much. But we have already seen impacts on some industry, like the auto industries. We have seen job losses, especially in the province of Ontario. We have seen some of the three big automakers in the US going ahead asking the Trump administration to build carve-outs for their sector specifically. But all of that at the moment is not really helping. And that is the reason that this trade deal is necessary. But a trade deal that works in Canada's favor is one that Mark Carney has said he will sign on.
Right, as always, Maha, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. As Maha is indicating, some within the government say a no deal might be better than a bad deal for Canada. We'll keep tracking the latest for you as far as the tariff trade war is concerned. For now, let's turn our attention to Sri Lanka. Well, Sri Lanka received a total of 2,244 tourists in July 2025, just in the month of July, with Indian travellers accounting for the largest share. This marks an increase of 6.6% in total tourist arrivals as compared to figures from the same period last year, according to the latest data released by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Indians basically accounted for 18.5% of the total tourist footfall. With that, we're slipping into a very quick break. Back in a moment with the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned. The United Kingdom has unveiled plans for a new law that will crack down on criminal gangs behind social media advertisements promoting dangerous small boat crossings and other forms of illegal immigration into the country. Under a new amendment to the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, currently going through the Parliament, a UK-wide offence will be introduced to criminalise the creation of material for publication online, which promotes or offers services facilitating a breach of Britain's immigration law. This after immigration protests intensified in the UK over the weekend. China and Russia began joint naval drills in the Sea of Japan on Sunday as they seek to reinforce their partnership and counterbalance what they see as a US-led global order. Alongside economic and political ties, Moscow and Beijing have strengthened their military cooperation in recent years, and their relations have deepened since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Meanwhile, Pakistan supports Iran's right to develop nuclear capability for peaceful purposes, as the two sides signed several agreements to expand cooperation in multiple fields. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who arrived in Islamabad on Saturday, met Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif at his official residence. At a joint press conference following their meeting, Sharif emphasized that Iran has the right to the peaceful use of nuclear energy, which has been at the center of the ongoing tensions with Israel. Tens of thousands of demonstrators have marched across the Sydney Harbour Bridge in Australia, calling for peace and aid deliveries in the war-ravaged Gaza Strip, where a humanitarian crisis of man-made starvation has been worsening as a result of Israel's punishing blockade. Despite curiosity around the new program, the launch date and specific details of which are yet to be released, data shows that the existing investment-based residency program in the US, the EB-5, which the Gold Card will replace, has seen more applications from India over the past 1 year than ever before, according to the American Immigrant Investor Alliance. Tragic news coming in. 4 missing members of an Indian origin family were found dead after a car crash in the United States. 4 elderly members of an Indian origin family from New York were found dead on Saturday, days after they went missing while traveling to a temple in Marshall County in West Virginia. The 4 senior citizens were reported missing from Buffalo, New York. Their vehicle, though, was located on the 2nd of August off a steep embankment along a road in Marshall County in West Virginia. The 4 persons were last spotted driving a light green car at a Burger King in Pennsylvania. This is what security footage showed. But currently, investigations are ongoing into this deadly road accident.